right, so I'm here with Annette and Doris, and unfortunately you had a bit of an accident, so can you just tell us a little bit about kind of what happened and why you called me up to come out and do a session with me?
Okay, so I was riding in the southern kettle moraine forest, and a turkey flew up, and she spun 180 degrees in a second, and I flew through the air, landed on my feet, I went down like a hill and broke my wrist, so I had surgery with plate and screws.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So you're on the mend, but you also felt like you were telling me that she used to be kind of better as she's 13 years old, and she kind of used to be a little more confident on the trail, and now it's kind of getting a little bit worse.
Yes, yep, so she's looking for something, because I'm looking for something for her to spin at. But again, if we're behind somebody, or usually like behind, if we're not leading, then I'm relaxed because I know I can catch it, and so it doesn't happen. I know I can sit it, where if it just happens out of the blue, I've flown off. And so that her and I change depending on if she's leading or we're alone, then it's hard for her.
Yeah. So do you feel confident if you were to get on her, like if your wrist was fine and you were getting on her here in an arena, would you feel pretty comfortable on her?
Yeah.
But once you get out on a trail, then you're getting a little bit nervous, or is it when you feel like her changing, of looking around for something to spook at, that's when you start getting nervous?
Yes, probably both. When she starts looking around, now I'm taking that more as she's gonna look at something to spin at.
Yeah.
And then also I get more nervous because I'm anticipating it.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I'm going to work with her, and what I'm going to be trying to figure out, it'll be a little bit more of an evaluation session versus a training session. And all that means is I'm not going to completely focus on, as soon as I find something, of just trying to fix it. I'm going to be trying to test a few different things. And if we want a horse to be very confident and relaxed down the trail, we need two things working for us really well. One is we need them to be as confident as possible. And so that's going to change based on the horse's experience level. This horse sounds pretty experienced, and the amount of preparation that we've done with exposing them to scary things. And we're going to test kind of how confident she is. Also innately, some horses are very left-brained and confident, and just innately they're very self-confident. They're really okay out on the trail, that sort of thing. Other horses tend to be more nervous, just innately. They're just more spooky and nervous at things. Then we also want to test yields. And the yields are really important, not only for control when we're riding them, but also the more yields we do, the more the horse is seeing us as the leader. And the more connected the horse is with us, the less likely they are to be looking for things to spook at. And so that's a big part of it. So I would say they're equal 50-50. If you have a horse that's innately very confident, you don't need to spend as much time building confidence. Every horse needs us to work on the yields so that they see us as the leader. But then if they're not as innately confident, then we have to spend some more time exposing them to more scary things, flags, and you were telling me you get used to balls and umbrellas and things like that. So it sounds like you've done a lot of your homework on that side of it, and you do the trail challenges. What's that called?
Equine trail sports.
Equine trail sports. And so you're getting her used to a lot of obstacles and things like that, and those are very technical and sometimes very scary. I'm kind of familiar with that. So I'm guessing that it's going to be about some yields. Also, just based on how she came off the trailer and how she's been handling in here, she seems a bit pushy on the halter. And so it sounds like you were kind of riding on her confidence for a while, and now some of the holes in maybe the leadership area are coming to the surface a little bit. And so we'll just kind of see what we get. I'm making that up right now. I don't know for sure until we get going. But since you're kind of out of commission at the moment, I'm just going to take her over and start playing with her, and we'll go from there. First thing I'm going to do is switch out to a rope halter, because it's harder for them to push on a rope halter and lean on it than a halter that has a wider webbing.
That's just my trailering.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, so you normally work with her in a rope halter?
I do.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I actually have a hybrid that has the band up here,
Okay.
and then the rest is rope, just so I could tie her up with it.
Yeah, those have become pretty popular. I'm not a fan of those. If the horse, pulls backwards or something and leans on it, the rope halter is really light when they're not pulling on it, but if they lean on it, it's just harder to lean on. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll switch out to a rope halter and go from there. And the system of horse training that I follow is based on a concept of first principles, which basically means what are things that are just at the core nature of a horse, how do they operate just from instincts? And then how do we operate off of our instincts? And that's where the barrier comes in between the horse and the human, is that they're innately prey animals, scared of things, and then we're innately predators. So we tend to be direct lined, we tend to be a little bit quick in what we're trying to do. We tend to naturally just try to make the horse do the things that we want them to do, versus setting it up in a way for them to choose the response that we're looking for. Because horses are innately prey animals, that lends themselves to not looking at the human as the leader. Something, we could be kind of something to be scared of, but if we've got them used to humans, then they can actually become dominant over humans as well. But it also lends itself to them looking for things to spook at and be worried. And that if we're not the leader to them, then they're left to their own devices as prey animals to look for things to spook at. Now, basic horse knowledge, I like that she's not pushing on me. This is good. But one of the basic things that we think about for becoming the leader to the horse is controlling their feet or moving their feet. And the most simple version of this is just owning space. And so I'm just going to wave this stick here, and I'm just going to ask her to step out of my space. I don't really need her to circle. I'm asking her to just be out of my bubble. There we go. And just ask her to step off. And what was nice about that is she wasn't sure what I was asking for, but she was happy to do it, okay? And just the way you were kind of handling her on the ground, it appeared to me that even though you do some groundwork with her and you can move her around and that sort of thing, you had a pretty high tolerance for how pushy she was. For me, I work with a lot of horses that are pretty dangerous, and so they may kick or bite or strike or different things, and I work with a lot of different horses regularly. So one of the ways that I stay safe doing this is by keeping them out of my space until I get to know them a little better. And so one of the rules that I would like you to establish with her is, if you want her closer into your space, I would like to see you bring her into your space, like deliberately ask her to, or you go into her space. But one of the just basic things that I'd like you to establish with her is that she's not allowed to just barge through your space when you haven't asked her to. And that's just a basic safety thing, but that just sets the tone right off the bat. And you were talking about leading her and where you stop and she has to stop too. And so I'm just going to practice that a little bit. See, like there I stopped and she kind of just rolled into my space a little bit. So I'm just going to ask her to kind of step back off. And when I do this, I like to stay facing forward and have the horse behind me, because a lot of times we're leading them and a lot of times we do our yields facing them, and that's kind of easier than doing it this way. But when we're leading them in basic handling, it's easier for them to run over top of us when our back is to them. And so I like to teach them to kind of have some respect for our back and not just always facing them. In other words, I want it to become her responsibility to stay out of our space unless we ask her to come in or we go into her space. And again, this is a little more about you than her, because she seems pretty cooperative with this right off the bat. And so it's more about just setting some safety habits in place. And again, for me, because I'm working with so many different horses, I really have to set that bar high. I think when people get comfortable with their horse that they work with all the time, and it's one horse, we start kind of letting some things slide. But I'm not saying this because I think you're going to get hurt with her on the ground. I'm saying it because she will see you as the leader more. So when you're just catching them in the pasture, you're training them at all times. Now I'm just going to test a few basic yields, some hindquarters and forequarters. And so when I'm testing these things, there's kind of three categories. There's driving pressure, steady pressure, those are the yields, and then there's confidence building, okay? And so those are the three things that I'm gonna kind of go over in various ways. So the last two things that I've done have been driving pressure, and she's responding very, very well. So it's like right off the bat, I'm thinking there's not a lot here for me. Like that's just going pretty smoothly. Still with driving pressure here, but I'll ask her to move her forequarters. That's going very good. And this is also really good. It's like a cold, rainy, windy day, and she's settled into the new place pretty good. So this is all looking really nice. I might check out her side pass here a little bit. And one of the things that I think would be interesting is a lot of you guys, when you're watching these videos and me working with a horse, I don't go to circling right away. But so many people, they pull the horse out and they immediately start circling them. And it can very quickly turn into exercise and not connection. And what I'm interested in is not exercising her. I'm interested, not that there's anything wrong with getting a little bit of fresh energy if they've been standing in a pen, or if they're cold, it's natural for a horse to move their feet. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong about moving their feet, but the idea being, I'm more interested in getting to her mind than just trying to tire her out, so that it's like, imagine if my advice to you was, well, chase her around in a round pen for an hour, then go for a trail ride. It's like, it might work until she gets really fit, and then it might not work as well. And so my goal is not getting her tired at all. My goal is to get her more connected to us. Again, that yield is super, really, really nice. So now we're going to try a couple of steady pressure yields before we go into circles. Not bad. So this is the first yield. Do you see that? You see a little bit of her she pushed through the pressure. So instead of just backing up, she just nosed it. And again, it's not bad. But it was negative. So in my mind, I'm grading all these things as we go. -10 to +10. 0 is they just don't know what to do. Like you put a feel on it and they just stand there and there's nothing happening. That would be 0. She was actually -1 because she pushed back into it. Does that make sense? All the driving pressure yields, I would have given her a 2, 3, 4. The sideways, I'd probably give her a 6 out of 10. It was really nice. Does that make sense? And so I'm just kind of grading these, and whenever something is in that lower 1, 2, 3s or 0, it's like, well, we just haven't done that. Or it's a negative number for sure. It's like, okay, take a little side note here, we got to address that. So one of the things is just when you put a feel on a horse, what's that first response that they get? Now, if she was a weanling or yearling that is first learning how to do this, I would just hold and wait for her to give to the halter. But she's 13, and she's been asked to give to steady pressure a lot. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little tap with the stick. So I'm going to put a feel here. And if there's any more pressure than just my finger right there, I'm going to add a little touch with the stick. Again, she's turning loose to that very quickly, which is nice. Now, there's surface level understanding of these things, and then there's depth of understanding, okay? And so with her, it seems like we're actually going to be focusing on building more depth of understanding to them. It doesn't seem like I'm asking her anything new that she hasn't heard of before. And so one of the ways that we could build depth to this is I could put this feel on, and then I could say, and go faster. And now there she stepped off of it really nice. So that was a win. So if you guys haven't heard of the Patreon page, it's where I have my whole horsemanship program. We post a new video there every Wednesday. And once a month, I do a fun monthly challenge. And we do giveaways at the end of that for whoever participates. And you can ask me questions on there. So if you're not on there, make sure you get yourself on there. And we'll leave a link in the description below. So this is going good. I'm going to try a little circle here. And then I think we're going to test out maybe some confidence building things. Okay. So, very nice. And then, so she didn't speed up. I like that when I'm testing them on a circle there, I'm looking for not how slow or fast they go. She went at what a gait was comfortable, and then she stayed there. And then when I brought my life down to stop her, she stopped right away. So, again, passing with flying colors. So you can see she's a little bit unsure of that, okay? And what that means, to me, I'm not using this flag. This is where, again, it's chess and not tic-tac-toe. I don't expect somebody to come running at you with a flag on a trail, okay? But what I'm looking for here is that she's in tune with my intention, not paying attention to the energy of the flag. So essentially, that's the system that failed when the turkey bomb went off. when the turkey took off, when you were riding her and she whirled around and you came off her, she was scared of the energy that the turkey had instead of being in tune with your intention. Your intention is that we're calm, we're walking down the trail. And so this is an example of another little hole that we could fill in a little bit of exposing her to something that has a lot of energy while our intention is staying calm, okay? And a lot of people know this and do this at a standstill, but not a lot of people work at this with some speed. And so here I'm going to ask her to walk on a circle because my intention is calm, even though the flag is being noisy. And so you can see this is where there's a little bit of a disconnect. Instead of reading my intention, she's reading the flag. Does that make sense? Yeah. And again, this is an example of being proactive with it. We don't want to be reactive. We don't want to wait for the turkey or the dog or the hiker or the bicyclist to come down the trail and scare us. We want to expose them to energy and other things that could be scary while asking them to read our intention. And so right there, she made a little change, so it went away. But what I'm doing is I prepared her by standing here doing this, and then I just brought her onto a circle. And so if I was going to ask her to circle with the flag, my intentions come up to walk. And you can see she reads that very well. But it's the energy of the flag that she's thinking about a little bit more than my intention. And this is never going to be like just absolutely perfect, but it could be better than this. And so this is definitely one of the things I would give you as homework, is to just experiment. And it could be anything. You could throw the stick and string over her. I could throw the lead rope over her while she's on a circle. Anything that's kind of coming at her, but while she's moving versus at a standstill. Okay? This is what bridges that gap between the predator-prey relationship that we have with horses. Again, it's not a perfect system, but the more you develop it and work at it and practice it regularly, the safer a horse is. So at the end of the day, it's not safe riding horses, but we can do a dangerous thing carefully by preparing them and being as proactive as possible with things like this. So this side, actually, it's interesting. It's her left side. It seems a little harder than her right side. Do you see her kind of testing it there? She's like, do I have to keep going? And so she's learning to get more in tune with that. So she passes that. Really good. So this layer rope is a great tool for exposure to steady pressure, to see if she's going to get bothered. So this is now steady pressure not in terms of yielding, but steady pressure in terms of confidence. And so she's handling that really well. But I want them to wear that. So I'm just putting a feel on it. And it can kind of mimic something, brushing against their leg that they weren't expecting, because when they walk around with the rope this loose on them, it kind of just touches them here and there. And you see we're not getting any reactions to that. So that's another pass. Now I'm going to do it as more of a yield. And so I'm going to put this around her leg, just above her hock here. And if a horse isn't very tame yet, this can be a very scary thing to them. And so I'm just going to ask her to walk here. And then I'm just going to put a little feel on it here. And you see what she did right away? She right away thought about stopping. She's like, what is that thing on there? But she didn't blow up and have a reaction. She didn't try kicking and take off running. So again, she passed very quickly. If a horse isn't very tame yet, they will react and get very afraid of that. I got one more test for her. Some horses can be very reactive to noises. So actually, before I saddle her, I'm just going to test her with the stock whip a little bit. Some horses are like, this is super easy to get them used to it. Other horses get very reactive to it. And so we'll just kind of see where she's at with it. The mic doesn't pick it up as loud as it is. The mic tends to like neutralize the sounds a bit. So those of you watching, it might not sound that loud, but it's cracking pretty good. And that was one of the filters that I go is like, is that rideable? Could you ride that? Her reaction to that noise. Yeah, that was rideable. So when a horse does a move that we would deem not very safe for us to have, a spook, a spin around, a buck, or something like that, I want you to give her a correction. So there's a few things that we're going to do. We're going to do some recovery strategies, which are the things that we're going to do if we notice her mental state change. It's like we're not going to wait for something bigger to happen. We're going to try to recover and get her back with us. Okay? So that's the proactive part. But occasionally, something happens that we weren't expecting and we have to now, we're reactive. And so if she does something that we deem kind of unsafe to try to ride through, we want to make that uncomfortable. So we're going to give them a correction. Usually for me, what that is, I bend their head to the side and I'll yield their hindquarters. And I'll do it fairly abruptly, and I'll do it until they settle down and their feet go slow again. But it has to be enough pressure that it gets their attention back on you and off of whatever startled them or caused them to get bothered there. So one of the exercises that I would highly recommend teaching her is a technique I call relax rein. We're going to ask her to just walk a circle, and I'm wanting her to bend her rib cage and do a partial disengagement in her hindquarters, and then have slack in this rein here as we're going. That's pretty nice on this side. And the idea is that you practice this when things are going well, so that it's a relaxing exercise to them. That's why I call it relax rein. So that if you're on a trail and she starts getting a little bit watchy, looking around at things, you can go back to this, and then she goes, oh yeah, I know this, and I'm supposed to be connected with the rider at that time. Because part of what gives them responsibility in it is that you're going to keep putting slack in the rein and asking her to keep it there. So what I don't want you to do is just pull on this inside rein and hold it steady. I want you to kind of give and take with it. So I put it in a feel, and then I release it right away, and I'm asking her to maintain that. But I'm not feeling her being very responsive to legs at all. I'm having to... There we go. So she respects the bit enough and everything that I can kind of make her do that, but she's not really participating in it. And so this would be one piece of homework I would give you too, is just practice this exercise until it's really good, really easy. But again, the biggest thing, and you'll have this video to go back and refer to, but is to not just hold this rein here the whole time. Put a feel and then drop your hand down. See, I'm dropping it down, and then you see how she takes it away right away? When they're good at it, they leave she'll leave her nose there, and for like a half a circle. That's all I'm looking for, like a half to a whole circle. But that's a lot more than a step, where they're just taking it away again right away. So I use this a lot if I'm riding a horse, even if they're a more advanced horse. Obviously for like a colt or something, if they're getting spooky or reactive to something, or they notice something off in the distance and they're like hyper focused on it, I'm going to use this to get them back with me. But I'll also use it on a more advanced horse, that if I ask them for something harder, like a flying lead change, or we go a lot faster in the arena or something, and they get emotional, I don't want to train them in an emotional state, so I'm going to bend them down and ask them to get back with me, get more relaxed, and then I have a green light to try whatever I was working on. So another thing I would have you do is whenever you feel like she's just totally doing her own thing, I would have you bend her around and see how I'm just using my rein and my leg a little bit more here, and I'm asking her to yield her hindquarters. And this would be a way that I would basically tell her, no, whatever you just did, I don't want to do that. And so that's like, if she spooks, I'll do that also if they change gaits. Like we're at a walk on a loose rein and they speed up a bit, I'm going to bend her there. I try to ride in a good position. So if we had a habit of gripping with our knees and pinching here, it's very easy to fall off. So like, it doesn't matter how good of a rider I was, if I'm gripping with my knees and I'm leaning forward, if the horse stops or spooks suddenly, I'm going to come off right away. But if I'm maintaining a good position, so my wife is better at this than I am, but if I'm maintaining a good position where I'm in the middle of the saddle, my weight is what we call on our balance point, where I'm in a vertical position here. I'm not leaning forward. I'm not leaning back. I'm not just slouch in here in a chair seat. Like this also wouldn't work, so this would be the opposite. It's like I'm a sack of potatoes up here, and I'm sitting back a little bit too far. So all those things factor into it. And then the other thing is, as soon as something goes wrong, I'm ready to bend them, like instantly. And I've practiced it enough when things are going well that it's instinct for me at this point. And so I would estimate that you would need to practice it somewhere between 500 and 1,000 times of you're riding along, one hand on the reins, and you lift and slide to bend the horse to a stop or bend them to the relaxed rein position. Does that make sense? And then watch, so this is the sequence. You lift this hand, slide, and see there's a little bit of the push right there, so I'm going to hold right there. So I made contact with both reins, and then she immediately pushed through it. And then see how she's like opening her mouth there? There's a lot of resistance there. So I'm gonna go back to that. We're gonna address that in a second. But you lift, slide this hand down. This hand goes to your thigh, and you lock down your thigh. And this other hand that you lifted with pushes on the saddle horn. When you push, you want to feel your butt kind of locked down in the saddle. And this is a more of a power position, more of a safe position to be in. Okay? And so you need to practice that until that is just muscle memory for you, right? And so again, the best time to practice it is you have a little arena at home, practice it. When you get back to riding, you need to get your confidence back, and you need to put yourself in safe situations. Don't just saddle up and go straight back to the trail and power through it. You know what I mean? So again, you're riding along here, and something changes that you didn't like, you're going to lift, slide, push on the horn, and get things shut down. Now, there's a few people that argue about this, that say, well, you just pull back on both reins or something like that. But the idea is that things happen a lot slower if you're bending them right away. And the idea isn't that you're bending them once they're going full speed. The idea is that their head elevated and they got alert or spooked, and you're just right there bending them around. Not that you waited for them to get to a dead run and then try to bend them. Of course, a horse could come off balance and fall over or something. So the idea is being very efficient at this, and as soon as something changes that you don't like, you immediately regain control, regroup, reassess the situation, decide if you need to dismount or carry on if the situation's over, and just go from there. Does that make sense? So, and even if you don't want to use that technique, whatever technique it is, you need to practice it proactively. That's the moral of the story. So that whatever your reaction is going to be is instinctive and it's immediate. Because when things go wrong, they don't go wrong slowly. They go wrong in a hurry. And so you need to be there ready to respond to that. And you can't, if you have to stop and think, what train was it and which hand and where did I live? It's too late. Yeah, it has to automatically happen. So that's the whole point, is you have to practice it when things are going well. Now let's address this, her stickiness here. So this is the other thing, we noticed this on the ground, that backup. Now even just from fixing it that one time, that got a little bit better. But I'm just gonna stay in here and ask her to back up off that pressure. I like to refer to this as reaching for them. And so I pick up a feel on these reins very slowly and very politely, and then I close my fingers. So it's slow, but it's very firm. And so if I'm paying attention to this, there's no room right now for her to push through my hands. I'm hunkered down here. I'm trying to be a post. And now I'm waiting for her to rock back, and then I'll release. And she actually does not feel too bad. She had one where she pushed into it pretty good. But overall, it doesn't feel bad. So however you've been riding her, I like what you've been doing. I just think you need to add a few more of these things proactively. I really like that one. Because that time she didn't just overflex, there was a connection to their feet. Because one of the things that you have to understand is that if a horse gets scared, we're going to default to our instincts and our lowest level of training, which is just pull. Okay? And a lot of people would say, I never would want to pull on my horse, do that. You're going to pull on them if you get scared while you're up there. It's our instinct, and it's going to happen. And so I don't want to wait until that happens to expose the horse to building depth of stopping and backing up. There are two exercises that you cannot go wrong by just having a really good stop and back up. So let's just test her what her stop is. Let's get a baseline. So I'm just going to trot her here. If we can get her motivated here. Even this, you're saying, like, see there, she spooked just a little bit at a bird. So watch. Do you see my hand just immediately came down, and now I'm just going to give her no, we don't need to do that. It was not a real big deal, But my policy is no free spooks. Okay? So she spooked and she ran into more pressure. She didn't get relief for spooking. If I would have just went, it's okay, you're fine, well then there's no reason for her to not think about spooking again. And it doesn't guarantee that they're not going to spook again, but it gets them to maybe compose themselves a little bit more and be like, I don't think I have to spook right now. You know what I mean? And so what I find is that when I ride horses like this, over time, it's not like an instant overnight effect or anything, but they get less spooky. Less and less spooky. They get more solid with things. So your homework is exposing her to energy versus intention on the ground, more feels off the halter. With the reins, you're going to work on your backing up and your stopping, and then the relaxed rein and no. No is just bending them and just saying, hey, we're not going to do that, whatever that was. So what things stood out to you the most as your takeaways?
That she's
When can I look at the
pushy.
camera?
Oh, sorry. That she's pushy. And I need to be kind of black and white and have more guidelines, and more softness with stopping, and also just having her, that makes her connected with me, which will prevent things from happening too. And those all add up to that. So.
Yeah. Awesome. My takeaway is I think she's a good horse. I don't think you have a massive problem here, a big problem at all. I think you've just let some things slide. You've gotten a little bit complacent with her, didn't fully maybe appreciate the idea that you're training at all times. And so I think you just got to hold her a little bit more accountable to what she knows, and I think that will lend itself to her being a safer horse for you. I don't think there's going to be one big moment or breakthrough or anything like that. I think it's just going to be an accumulation of building a lot of these 1% at a time, getting better each session with her. 1% a day equals 100% at the end of that. So I think that's what I would focus on. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming out, Annette, today. And thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.